In the heart of Detroit, two names shaped not just cars, but the identity of America itself. Ford and General Motors weren't simply building machines. They were crafting competing visions of freedom, power, and prestige. From Henry Ford's Model T to GM's bold strategies, from the roar of the Mustang and Camaro to the silence of today's electric battles, their rivalry has defined generations. This is a saga of innovation, stubbornness, survival, and reinvention. It's about secret advantages, shocking downfalls, and a relentless fight to stay on top. A century later, the war isn't over. It has simply evolved. This is the untold story of Ford versus GM. Detroit wasn't always the beating heart of the automobile. In the early 1900s, it was just another industrial town until two men turned it into the stage for one of history's greatest rivalries. Henry Ford believed in building a single, affordable car that every American could own. To him, the automobile was freedom, but it had to be simple, cheap, and reliable. Across town, Alfred Sloan of General Motors saw things differently. He believed people craved choice, colors, styles, upgrades, and the feeling of owning something new every few years. This clash of vision, Ford's stubborn pursuit of one perfect car versus Sloan's flexible empire of many, wasn't just about vehicles. It was about identity, ambition, and the very soul of American industry. And as these two philosophies collided, a battle was set in motion that would define Detroit for generations. In 1908, Henry Ford unveiled the car that would change everything, the Model T. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't luxurious, but it was revolutionary. With a price tag that ordinary workers could actually afford, the Model T became the people's car. For the first time, families who had only dreamed of owning an automobile could finally buy one. Ford's genius wasn't just in the car itself, but in how it was built. His moving assembly lines slashed costs and boosted speed, turning out vehicles faster than anyone thought possible. Soon, black Model Ts flooded American roads, and Ford's vision of mobility for the masses was becoming reality. But success can breed complacency. While Ford focused on efficiency, General Motors watched closely. Alfred Sloan wasn't impressed by sameness, and he believed he had found Ford's greatest weakness, one that GM would soon exploit. While Ford dominated the roads with endless black Model Ts, Alfred Sloan saw an opening. People were proud to own a car, but did they really want the same one as everyone else? Sloan believed variety was the key to loyalty. He reimagined General Motors as a company that could offer something for every budget and taste, from affordable Chevrolets to luxurious Cadillacs. Even more daring, Sloan introduced yearly model changes. The idea was simple but brilliant. Make cars feel new every year, turning them into symbols of status and personal expression. Consumers loved it, and suddenly GM had what Ford didn't: excitement. As GM's sales climbed, Ford refused to budge, still insisting one car was enough. But beneath the surface, the tide was shifting. America's appetite for choice was growing, and Sloan's gamble was about to pay off in a way Ford never expected. The battle wasn't only fought on the streets or in showrooms, it was also a clash of personalities. Henry Ford was stubborn, convinced his way was the only way. He mocked GM's obsession with style and dismissed the idea of yearly updates as wasteful. Ford saw himself as a man of the people, building a car that served every family, not a fashion statement. Alfred Sloan, on the other hand, was calculated, almost cold. He didn't build cars with his own hands, but he built systems, marketing strategies, corporate hierarchies, and brand identities that gave GM an edge. Where Ford was rigid, Sloan was flexible. Where Ford trusted instinct, Sloan trusted data. It was genius versus strategy, vision versus adaptation. And as the 1920s roared on, Sloan's quiet discipline began to chip away at Ford's empire, setting the stage for a dramatic reversal. By the 1960s, the rivalry had roared onto a new battlefield, the streets. In 1964, Ford unveiled the Mustang, sleek, affordable, and bursting with youthful energy. It wasn't just a car, it was freedom on four wheels, a symbol of rebellion that captured America's imagination. Sales skyrocketed, and Ford once again felt untouchable. But GM wasn't about to sit idle. Just 2 years later, Chevrolet fired back with the Camaro, designed specifically to take on the Mustang. The Camaro was aggressive, stylish, and versatile, offering trims that appealed to everyday drivers and speed enthusiasts alike. Suddenly, the streets became a stage for one of the fiercest showdowns in automotive history. Car lovers debated endlessly. Drag strips thundered with rival engines, and Detroit had sparked a cultural phenomenon. Yet beneath the roar of muscle, storm clouds loomed, because times were about to change. The golden age of muscle couldn't last forever. In the 1970s, the oil crisis struck, and suddenly gas-guzzling engines looked like dinosaurs. Long lines formed at fuel stations, and American drivers began to question the cars they once worshipped. Ford and GM, once kings of the road, now faced an unexpected enemy: the world's dependence on oil. Foreign automakers, especially from Japan, saw their chance. Compact, fuel-efficient cars flooded into the U.S., offering exactly what American families needed. Meanwhile, Detroit giants scrambled. Ford rushed to downsize its models while GM attempted quick fixes that often fell short. For the first time, the rivalry wasn't just between Ford and GM. It was a fight for survival against outsiders. The cracks in Detroit's armor were showing, and both companies faced a haunting question: could they adapt fast enough to hold their ground? As the American market grew tougher, both Ford and GM turned their eyes overseas. The rivalry that began in Detroit now stretched across continents. Ford planted its flag in Europe with models like the Fiesta and Escort, cars built for tighter streets and smaller budgets. GM countered with Opel and Vauxhall, building its own European footprint. In Latin America and Asia, the competition was just as fierce. Factories sprang up in Brazil, South Korea, and beyond, each company desperate to claim territory. It wasn't just about selling cars. It was about exporting identity, proving whose vision of the automobile would win the world. But global expansion came with new risks: cultural differences, unpredictable economies, and unfamiliar rivals waiting to strike. Ford and GM had gone from fighting each other in Detroit to waging a worldwide battle, and this global chess match was only getting started. By the 1980s and 1990s, the battlefield had shifted once again. Customers no longer wanted just horsepower. They wanted safety, comfort, and technology. Ford poured resources into advancements like airbags and fuel injection, while GM pushed luxury through Cadillac and experimented with electronics. Each tried to prove they could define what the car of the future should be. Yet innovation often came with risk. GM invested heavily in projects that flopped, from questionable designs to unreliable tech. Ford wasn't immune either, facing recalls that tarnished its reputation. Both giants struggled to balance bold ideas with the need to keep millions of cars on the road. The race for prestige was fierce, but the cost of mistakes was high. And as they wrestled with innovation, a darker reality loomed. Financial trouble was creeping closer, threatening to bring Detroit's titans to their knees. The new millennium exposed just how fragile Detroit's giants had become. Mounting debt, shrinking sales, and fierce foreign competition pushed Ford and GM to the edge. For General Motors, the unthinkable happened. In 2009, it filed for bankruptcy, a shocking fall for a company once seen as untouchable. Factories closed, workers were laid off, and the government stepped in with massive bailouts to keep the brand alive. Ford faced its own struggles, but in a bold move, it mortgaged nearly everything it owned years earlier, securing cash that kept it afloat when disaster struck. This daring gamble spared Ford from bankruptcy, but it came at a heavy cost. For both companies, the dark years weren't just about money, they were about identity. Could Detroit's legends reinvent themselves after losing so much? Or had their glory days truly passed? Just when many thought the rivalry had faded, a new battleground emerged: electric vehicles. Ford shocked the industry with the F-150 Lightning, electrifying America's best-selling truck. GM answered with its Ultium battery platform and the revival of the Hummer as a powerful EV. Suddenly, Detroit's classic enemies were facing off again, this time with silence instead of roar, but with just as much intensity. Both companies raced to outdo each other, pouring billions into factories, tech, and design. But the stakes are higher now. They're not only fighting each other, they're fighting Tesla, global startups, and a world demanding cleaner solutions. The rivalry that began with steel and gasoline now burns bright in lithium and software. A century after it all began, Ford and GM remain locked in combat, proving that in Detroit, some battles never end.